Hey guys, so we had an audio malfunction. So one of the microphones ended up not picking up, so we had to make do with iPhone audio, which was horrible because of the room echo and things like that. But we did fix it as much as we could. So just keep that in mind while listening. Hope you guys still enjoy. Thanks.
Let's talk about Hitler.
That'll make sense later.
I'm immaculately conceived.
I don't know what to do.
I swear I'm not stupid.
Take it or leave it. Sometimes you just want to leave it.
If I gotta borrow my mom's underwear, I'm borrowing her underwear.
You just, yeah.
Misa likes the Jar Jar Binks.
I'm not gonna edit it out.
Oh no.
I don't know. Like I think it was pretty great. Just staying on the
Sucks to
planet.
suck.
Why are you saying it with a question mark?
Clap, bitch.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Action.
And we're live. I'm Anna. I'm Jessica. And this is Why Are You Yelling? Welcome back. We have another F1 race review for everybody. I know you're so excited. You should feel blessed and highly favored because we are jumping through hoops to make this possible for everybody, to be consistent for you because we're trying to be better.
This is for you. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Because obviously people are asking for this.
Yes, they are.
This is clearly the podcast everybody's listening to for their F1 news and race reviews.
It is.
We're so late right now. It is so late. So everybody who watches this better be nice. Okay?
Okay. All right. So getting straight into it because we're trying to hustle through so we can go to bed. We are going to do a race review for round 4 of the F1 2025 season. This week, it was the Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix. It is in Saudi Arabia. Nope, it's not. Bahrain's a country.
Yep.
I don't do maps good. If you're new here, I don't do maps good.
No.
Okay, so Bahrain is its own country. And the track that they're racing at is called the Bahrain International Circuit. I did find out this weekend that Bahrain, there's like it's like the Bank of Bahrain or something like that, is the majority owner of McLaren.
Yeah, that's what I kept saying. It's like another whole.
I was very confused.
What do you mean?
The first time I heard them say that, it was at the end of the race, and I was like, huh?
Yeah.
And I had to Google it, and I was like,
but they kept saying that for F1 in general, too. I heard, like, Doyle Palmer say that, and I was like, what do you mean? But I didn't look it up to figure out what he meant. But it was a special place. So our podium, we have Oscar Piastri, who just was awesome the entire weekend. Then we have George Russell, who was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And Lando Norris, who I think also did a really good job. So it was super interesting. But yeah, we love us some Oscar.
Yeah, I was very excited about Oscar. This is one of our fun facts. I'll give you a spoiler before we get to the fun fact section. He scored what is referred to as a hat trick in Formula One, which is when you get pole position in qualifying, you get first in the race, and then you also get fastest lap in the race. And he is the 49th driver to do that in F1 history.
Nice. Yep. Well, also, our constructor standings now are we have McLaren at 151 points, Mercedes at 93, Red Bull at 71, Ferrari at 57, Haas at 20, Williams at 19, Aston Martin at 10, Racing Bulls at 7, Alpine at 6, and Kick Sauber at 6. So now everybody has points.
Woo!
Because Pierre Gasly said he was tired of that.
Yes.
So he got him some points.
Yeah, and look out for Mercedes making their comeback. I saw someone on Twitter make the joke about Lewis Hamilton being like, excuse me, this is not the Mercedes I elect you with. What is going on?
Exactly. And with our driver standings, Lando Norris because he got that third position, he's good. He is still ahead.
He squeaked out that third place in like the last lap so that Leclerc didn't get a podium, which I was a little sad about, but it's okay.
It's okay, guys. It'll be okay. It'll be all right. We're getting there. But now Oscar Piastri has surpassed Max Verstappen, and he is now second in the championship. So we've got Lando, Oscar, Max, George, Charles, Kimi, Lewis. That's interesting. Kimi, then Lewis, Alexander Albon, Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Nico Hulkenberg, Oliver Behrman, Yuki Tsunoda, Isaac Hadjar, and Carlos Sainz. They are the 16 drivers with points currently. And then we have Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, and Gabriel Bortoleto with no points currently. But, I mean, we've only got 4 drivers with no points. That's pretty.
Yeah, and it's only 4 races in the season.
It's pretty crazy. So
we're going to jump into our fun facts. So Oscar Piastri winning was McLaren's first ever victory in Bahrain, which comes on their 22nd visit to this particular circuit for F1. And I already mentioned Oscar's hat trick and being the 49th driver to do so. So this race was actually Piastri's 50th Grand Prix start, and he won it. Good luck there. Great. And he actually debuted at this same venue in 2023. The stars aligned. This was also Oscar's 30th consecutive point-scoring race weekend.
Dude, and he is like, he is consistent. So consistent and reliable.
This is only his 3rd season in Formula One. He had taken there was like what you might call like a gap year in between when he won the F2 championship, and then he was a reserve driver for like a year, I believe, for Alpine. And then he signed with McLaren. And so this is his 3rd Formula One season. And he is, I think, quietly becoming like a favorite to become a world champion. I know everyone says that about all the newbies. But he has consistently just gotten better and better. Like it's easy, I think, to start off like hot, on like a hot streak, and then you kind of peak too soon. I think the steady, progressive, consistent growth is a very good sign of things to come for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's entirely possible he could be contending for the world championship this year.
Yeah, no, it's insane. That's like, it was interesting because I had told you I went and watched Lewis Hamilton's first ever race he ever did with back in 2007, and it was with McLaren. And Alonso was like a favorite, he at that time he was like already a 2-time world champion, and then you had this rookie show up on the scene, so it's kept low-key reminding me, like Oscar reminded me of that, because Lewis just came, and I mean literally on his first race he was second, I believe. I think it ended up being like Alonso first and Lewis second, and I'm like, and Alonso was having issues keeping up with him the entire weekend, like this person who has way less experience than you and is just naturally gifted. It just reminds me of that, where I'm like, watch out. In a McLaren, watch out.
It might just be Oscar's year. We'll see.
I don't know. It's gonna, yeah. It's just, you just don't know. We just don't know. But yeah.
It'll be interesting to see as the season progresses, at what point McLaren may be forced to make a decision about whether they need to put their eggs in Oscar's basket or Lando's basket for the Drivers' Championship.
I think it's going to depend how far ahead they are of everybody else. Like, meaning, do you have the 3rd, 4th, 5th place people? Are they always consistent? So are they always right behind you? Or are you having, like, on the podium one weekend, it's George, and then it's Max, and then it's somebody else, and then it's some, if it depends, I think, how consistent everybody else is. That's when it's like, okay, we're really going to have to do whatever. But if you have a lot of other drivers and teams that are kind of spread out through there, you might not be as pressured to make the decision and let this little
figure it out itself. Yeah, so it's basically, if it's just your 2 drivers duking it out, you kind of got to let them duke it out while trying to be as respectful as a team as possible. Because I mean, we look at, the race last weekend, when Lando was ahead, when they were figuring out their pitting strategy, they did not pit Oscar to undercut Lando, and that was intentional. I think because they want to, if you qualify first, we're going to give you, we're not going to try and undercut that.
Yes, yeah, team, which they didn't. I mean, they had talked about that too today, how they weren't they didn't think that they would undercut. Or they wouldn't, I wouldn't undercut Oscar. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that would just be kind of bizarre within the team to do that. That would be nuts.
So, another fun fact, every race this year has been won from pole position. And again, with this answer, like, this year, in every race so far, it's like, there's been 4. Calm down. We're only a 6th of the way through the calendar.
Oh my gosh.
So, Piastri's winning margarine. That started to say that.
Margarine.
Yum. Piastri's winning margin was the largest of the season so far at 15.499 seconds.
I didn't even realize it. I actually never really. I think I was so in trying to see who else was going to finish where. I didn't even look at the gap to him.
He was cruising.
He was gone. He said, "I'm gone."
At one point, I looked in. I was looking at like the tracker like map that it shows you, and he was so far ahead. I'm like, he's just bored.
I think he's happy.
Oh yeah.
To me, I'm like, I always find a way to bring up Lewis. Lewis was somebody going there like, what do you do when you're out front? And he had said, I just imagine I'm chasing myself. Like I you to kind of I did it shy. I just envision that I'm also ahead of me, and I'm just like, I'm gonna catch myself, and I'm like, yeah, that would be how you just stay. Like
it's like the ghost mode thing, like Mario Kart. If you or another player sets like a record, for a track, it's like you can race against the ghost and see if you can try and beat their time.
Yes, they do that in iRacing whenever I mess with Travis's sim. Sometimes you can see like your ghost car, or like if he said a lot of time, and I'm trying to see how close I can get to it. It's super bizarre, but it actually is kind of helpful. Yeah. So I could see we're envisioning that would be like to kind of keep something to do,
pushing, I guess, keep it interesting. Okay, so moving on to George Russell. He finished P2, and that was his best career finish in Bahrain, and his best finish of the 2025 season to date. It's also his 14th consecutive points finish, which is a career best run. So this is his longest consecutive string of scoring points.
Wow. George is like that guy that I always like just roll my eyes when I see him, and it's just because he, like we've talked about before, it's he looks like the type of person whose family like sailboats for fun, like he just has that, like, I'm not saying that's even true, by the way. I'm just saying like he just has that stereotypical like I'm super rich aura, but like British rich.
And it doesn't help that Tommy Hilfiger is like the apparel sponsor for Mercedes. So
like all of money. It's all of money rich is what it is. But like I like George. Like he's like that cousin that you pick on a lot and they get on your nerves, but you do like them.
Mm-hmm. That's a fun to have around.
Yeah, like that's how George is for me. But he really impressed me this weekend. So I was like,
he's, I think, an underrated driver.
Yeah.
I think that,
at least right now, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people toss around a bunch of other names of other drivers that they're like, oh, they're one of the, top 5 drivers on the grid right down, da-da-da. But I mean, if you look at his performances last year, even with the struggles that Mercedes had as a team and what he's managed to achieve so far in the first 4 races of the season, I think he's underrated, and I think he is a very good driver. I mean, there's a reason Mercedes went after him and so like really gung-ho about signing him. He did.
I think if there's going to be any surprise championship contenders, it will be George.
Jim? I could see that.
I could see, and I think it'll be something that we start to see like mid-season. We're like, wait a minute.
I could see him quietly just picking up all these 2nd, 3rd, 4th place finishes.
Yeah, I don't see it because I mean, I would be surprised if we saw podium after podium after podium. I can see like sprinkling in some podiums but like quietly finishing in like the top 5, top 6, and then all of a sudden you're like, I've got a problem here.
Yep.
I could see that happening.
I could see it. So passing Charles Leclerc for 3rd kept Lando Norris in the lead of the Drivers' Championship. So we mentioned that earlier. Him making that last minute swoop move on Charles came in clutch to get that podium. So he gained 3 places. So Lando Norris gained 3 places on the first lap, something he only achieved once in all of last season, which is when he started from 15th on the grid in Azerbaijan. Good. Which I know we're going to talk a little bit later about Lando's start.
Yeah,
and kind of his performance for this race. Moving on to Charles Leclerc finishing P4, and he led his first laps of the race since Austin last year. He finished 4th for the 2nd consecutive Grand Prix.
We had like a Ferrari 1-2 for like a second, and I was like, turn it off. I'm going to start out. That's not exactly the one. I'd like the positions to be flipped, but this is fine.
I'll take it.
This is fine.
And then teammate Lewis Hamilton achieved his best Grand Prix finish since joining Ferrari with P5. Moving on to Red Bull, Max Verstappen took P6, which is his lowest finish of the season. His 2 pit stops in the race were his slowest stops of the season so far, which there was some bizarre things going on with the light in the Red Bull pit stop. It just wasn't working for some reason.
Yeah, something was like really, really wrong with that, which we have some stuff for Red Bull to talk about. But yeah, him and Yuki both experienced a lot of the same issues the whole weekend. So that was just super bizarre.
And speaking of Yuki Tsunoda, he finished in P9. That was his best result of the season so far. And the first points that the second Red Bull car has scored this season. So it means this is the first double point score of the season for Red Bull. Which I was like, yay, Yuki!
Which we're like, this season so far. But honestly, I bet you if you look at some of the past races, I don't remember the last time Sergio even had scored points. So I'm sure it's been a minute since the second Red Bull driver has scored points at all. So I'm like, yes, go Yuki.
Moving on to Pierre Gasly with Alpine. He scored P7 in this race, giving Alpine their first points of the season to lift them above Kick Sauber and off the bottom of the Constructors' Championship table.
He killed it. He just was on it.
Yes.
It was insane. Like everybody, like even the F1 commentators, they were like, you heard me right. Like Pierre Gasly's on the fastest lap. We're like, what? What do you mean? Verbal sectors. And we're like, what?
Somebody picked him as sort of their like surprise sort of, I forget who it was, but they picked him as their sort of dark horse contender for this coming into this weekend. They're like, people forget he finished last season very strong. The last several races of
he tested really well there too, from what I remember hearing as well. So those two like things combined, I'm like, yeah, that's a good on them from predicting that because he did a really good job.
That's that somebody knows their ish when it comes to F1.
That was something Will Buxton predicted. That was not him because they left us. But we're not salty. We're not bitter about it. But
we love Laura Winter.
Oh, but no, love. Yeah, I mean, I hope she's there for every time.
I miss her when last year. I missed her every season. Yeah, only she was gone. Where is she? Okay, so moving on to Esteban Ocon driving for Haas. He took P8 to score points after crashing during qualifying, which we will talk about a little bit later. Ali Behrman finished in P10 for Haas to score 1 point after starting the race from last on the grid.
That was insane. He gained 10 places. That's crazy. That's the most that anybody the entire race did. But, I mean, that's insane.
And this was his third consecutive points finish this season. So moving on to Kimi Antonelli driving for Mercedes, took P11. It's the first time he has failed to score as a Grand Prix driver. Wah, wah. Poor Kimi, just outside the points. I feel like he was struggling weirdly this weekend, or at least during a race. I kept hearing like lockups and track limits and that he was having
things like that. And I think from what I remember, they were trying they gave him some used softs and then they pitted him again, but then gave him softs again. I don't know. It was like something was just weird. But I also, because I was trying when I was looking, trying to put together the rookie report, something that I think happened was when everybody came back out after that safety car and everybody got kind of stuck behind Max and Ocon, and Antonelli was also behind Max. So I think there was just a lot of tire degradation that happened right in the midfield. So then by the time everybody got around everybody, they didn't have much like bite left in them. So I think that's sort of like he was sort of a victim of that because I couldn't find a bunch of mistakes besides like the track limit and stuff.
So for Alex Albon driving for Williams, he finished P12. It's also the first time he has failed to score points this season. And his teammate Carlos Sainz retired from the race and is the only driver to fail to finish either of the last two Grand Prix. It's Grands Prix for the plural version. It's odd.
GPs.
Jesus. Last two main races. There you go. Grands Prix.
Grands Prix.
And that is the end of our fun facts.
That's the fastest we've ever went through them.
I know.
Almost like, what do you mean?
What are we talking about then? We know. There's plenty to talk about.
Did you see, by the way, where like the Alpine? So back in Japan, Jack Doohan did not. He didn't take part in practice one because of a reserve driver. But that reserve driver is now no longer a reserve driver for Alpine and is like a reserve driver for somebody else or something?
For Haas, I believe.
Yes. And so somebody asked Jack about all this. So how does that make you feel to basically know like you had to give up your free practice for no reason? Because like now he's somewhere else. And he was like, It's out of my control. But low key, what the fuck? That's so nuts. Like, that is kind of like crazy. Because, like, that was weird. I wonder what happened behind the scenes, because that does kind of suck, because that also, like, he didn't get a lot of time on track because of that. And then, his crash that happened in FP2. That was just such a weird thing that was kind of glossed over. And I'm like, that's bizarre. I wonder what the story to that is.
I know that teams are required throughout the season. There's a certain number of times that they have to give up a free practice session to a reserve driver or to like a rookie driver.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to, it's part of the training and that thing.
4 sessions, I think.
Yeah, over the course of the season, and they can pick and choose which one they want to do. But a lot of times they're picking from, F2 drivers, reserve drivers, things like that. And it's part of the trying to get younger drivers and
it was
in a car and like track.
It was just like,
but I guess I say that to say that I know some drivers are reserved for multiple teams. So, like, Ali Behrman, for instance, was a reserve driver for Ferrari and Haas last year.
Yeah.
With, like, Ferrari basically was, like, took priority. So if they needed him, he did what they needed. But if Haas needed him, Ferrari basically could kind of, like, loan him out to Haas. And
I haven't looked at it, the way it was worded made it sound like he was no longer a reserve driver for Alpine. I'm like, that would be so lame to have to give that up just for you to then be like, yeah, I'm actually not your reserve, or one of your reserve drivers anymore.
Which I guess you would maybe want some consistency in your reserve drivers. So if you're going to have somebody take a free practice session, it would be nice if it's the same person that is your reserve driver that could potentially then have to fill in during the season. So I get that part. But also it's like every team is required to give up free practice.
It just makes you go, damn, maybe we could have given it to Cole Pinto. Yeah, get somebody else. Or if you weren't going to be our reserve driver anymore, could have just let Jack actually participate and get some of the data that we probably could have relied better on. But I just thought that was a really weird thing that they kind of mentioned, and then it was just kind of over, and I was like, that was weird, because that's right, that is that same exact guy. So Lando, he struggled a little bit in qualifying. We said he qualified 6th, but he had a really great start. Like, he just was on it.
If we discount his starting at a position outside of his grid box.
Yeah. Which everybody even said he had a good start regardless.
Yeah.
The
couple centimeters now wouldn't have mattered. But good on Max for calling it out. He is Max Eagle Eye Verstappen. He is always on it. He notices every little thing and is quick to get on a radio and call somebody out.
Okay, here's the thing that's funny. When Max does it, it's fine. But when George does it, he's a tattletale. And it's just how it is. Because if George would have done that, which I think he has for other drivers.
All of them do.
Everybody's like, oh my gosh. But Max does it, and it's like, well, he is. Which he was. He was. Fair enough. I just thought that was interesting. I did think it was kind of funny just because they kind of spat last weekend in Japan. And so then Max is like, excuse me. He's over in his box. And it was like, yeah. But no, Lando did a really good job. He, it's kind of interesting because you were talking about how, this was a few episodes ago, about, I think he was showing more maturity and confidence, and it's all gone.
We regress all.
It's gone. Backslid. Yes, backslid hard. And hopefully he can regroup, not be too hard on himself, because we're at the start. It's actually not that bad.
I feel like his reaction to his performance was disproportionate to his actual performance.
But honestly, I get it, because that would be me. If I made a single mistake, I'm the worst person in the entire planet. I should just drown myself. So I get that energy, but I'm also like, no, it's really not that bad, though. Like, it's okay. It's fine. Don't start drowning, bro. It's gonna be all right.
It's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, Lando, are there any positives you can take away from this weekend? And he's just like, no. He's like, not really. I just sucked and I should give it up. But like, I should go work on McDonald's or something. We're like, whoa, calm down, sir.
Nobody's saying that.
Literally. I mean, like, qualified P6 and started P6. You had a great start. You made up 3 places. You still ended up finishing on the podium.
Even with a penalty. Like, you did fine. Like, you did a really good job.
Considering all the factors, you did a really good job. And I don't know, maybe he just thinks that he should be, if he's, maybe his perspective is, if I'm not qualifying first and finishing first in every race, then I'm a failure. But I think that that's a very warped perspective to take of success. I know it is the ultimate sign of success, but like, you are your own sort of like definer of what success means to you. I think this was still a successful weekend for Lando, like relatively.
I think that, I'm sure he's dealing with the fact that last season they didn't necessarily expect, like at the start of last season, to be where they ended up, like actually fighting. And I'm sure that's in the back of his head where he's like, I have to be like 100% better the whole fucking time, because 1, I wasn't last time and look what happened, and look at how close I was. In 2, how do I know that somebody else isn't going to be us last season? How do I know another team midway through is not going to suddenly be fighting for this shit? Is it going to be Matt's? Is it going to be George? Whoever it could be. It could be somebody. So I need to have the largest margin possible for myself, because I've been on the other side of it in both ways. So I could see that. And I also think it's probably mentally difficult when last season it was like you couldn't necessarily always surpass Max. Now it's Oscar. And I think that's a whole other scenario on top of what you were dealing with last time. So I'm sure there's a lot of like, and that's not necessarily something you can discuss with all of the team, because half the team is for Oscar. So, and Zach Brown says they don't have a number 2 driver. They got 2 number 1 drivers, which is super American. And that's how we've talked about it. I'm like, that feels like an American thing, the mindset to be, because we're like, nope, they're both great. Till one's not. Until then, they're both number 1.
I think that it is okay to be critical of yourself and your performance. I think it is a good thing to be self-aware and to be able to acknowledge, yeah, I made these mistakes. But the important part is to take it, learn from it, and move on.
Oh, yeah.
You're allowed to take your time, feel sad, throw your pity party, feel sad for yourself. But like at some point, like come like Monday morning after the Sunday race, come Monday morning, you got to brush it off and move on.
Which I think I'm sure he does. I think half of it is that we're getting these, like, they're interviewing him directly after it. And so
everybody's just so Orlando.
And he's just like, what? He's like, what? Damn. What do you want me to say? I'm suck. Let me just get ahead of all the memes that everyone's going to have. I'm trash. And I'm like, chill. Calm down. Don't get on Instagram Reels, because honestly, that's what you're going to see. But it's just because people are trying to be funny, not because they actually think that. But I don't know. It's still way too early to tell what's going to happen. And honestly, it's way too close to even have like, oh, this is what it's going to be. But I think Lando will probably find his footing. I think that as much as I could see it being Oscar or George, I think Lando's going to win the Drivers' Championship. Granted, we'll see 6 races from now if I feel that way, but I just think that if he can get it together, like, sharpen up, straighten up, you got it. Wipe it off, brush it off, you got it. Just keep on going.
Yeah, maybe done. The mental aspect of the game is, I think, too often overlooked. And it's one of the most critical parts, especially in a sport like this one.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a physical, and we talked about before, there's a large physical component to being a Formula One driver. But there's an equally large part that's mental, especially when you're relying on like your almost even like subconscious like reactions and instinctual like feel. Like a lot of that isn't like some of it's muscle memory, but a lot of it is your brain working automatically. And it's like if you have your brain doing all these things automatically and then you try to bog down your system with all these other self-disparaging, woe is me thoughts, it's going to fuck you up. It's going to fuck your system up. And then you're not going to be at your peak performance. It's like,
no, yeah. He needs to go because you're
go to therapy.
You're
get a psychologist.
Listen, you are a McLaren driver. They have archives and archives of footage probably we've never seen of Senna. The best there has ever been or probably ever will be. Just one skill, too, how his mentality was. Go absorb every ounce of that you can, because half of the problem is giving a fuck what people are going to say about you. And you know, Senna didn't give a fuck what you said about him. All he cared about were his results, and that was it. And if he didn't perform, yeah, I'm sure he did not enjoy it, but it also was, Senna didn't seem like the type to, let me get extremely mentally bogged down by what everybody's going to say about me, because now I'm moving on to be like, what did I do wrong? Okay, let's just move on from that, because I know I can do better. Like, just stop. I think Lando's issue is caring too much about what people that you're never going to meet in your life, because we're all losers talking about you. Like, who cares what any of us say? You got it. Stop caring about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one leg up that Max has over, like, everybody else. Yeah, Max truly is the personification of don't give a fuck.
Not about hair.
He does not care. He literally, if he has a bad weekend, he's like, yeah, it was shit race, shit performance, there was issues with the car, or I wasn't my best. Okay, we'll learn from it and move on, try again next week. Like, and that's it, you know?
Yeah, I think, too, the thing with Max is it's very rare that it's Max's fault. And that's the other part of it. So I think that, it's hard to, but it'll be fine. You got it. Get it together. You'll be good. But speaking of Max and Red Bull, we kind of talked about, they just had a really bad weekend. It was just not for them. It was interesting because Yuki and Max basically kept complaining the whole weekend about the exact same issue I don't think they didn't know the other one was complaining about it, like even throughout the practice session. So I thought that was interesting because in my mind, in a way, that shows Yuki is closer to Max than any of the other drivers have been, because he's struggling with the same things Max is struggling with, rather than like just completely different issues that like Max is he's managing. So I thought that was interesting. And then, I mean, both of them struggling with the pit stops, because like, what was that? Like, that was bizarre. So like Max goes in pits, and there's these LED lights, that basically they'll flash for the driver to know, okay, I can go in the fast lane in the pit. When the pit stop is essentially over, it directs them to go to the fast lane to leave the pit.
Yes, and they're not supposed to move until that light flashes. I believe it's green to tell them to go. I
don't know if it's green or if the red just goes away.
Basically, the light changes to tell them that they can leave, because they can't see the car. They literally they have a very limited view, actually, of what they can see around the car. So they could be, somebody could be struggling to get a jack off the car. There could be a nut not going on a wheel. Like, there's so many things that could be happening. They don't know. Their only job is when that light changes, they know the pit stop's over and they take off as quickly as they can. And sometimes the light might not change even after the pit stop is over if there's another car already in the fast lane, and it would be considered an unsafe release.
Well, that's what I thought it was mostly for, because normally there's the guy like right in front of the car who lifts it up so they can change the tires, and normally they lower him or they lower the car, and then they look at that light, and that's when like it kind of directs them when they can go. But it didn't. Nothing changed. So Matt's like, what the fuck? And so it made the pit stop longer. And the exact same thing happened to Yuki. And then you saw one of the pit crew members for Red Bull. They're like, after that they had pulled away, they're like, yeah, we don't know. You can kind of see them like showing each other like, what the hell's...
They waved the LED light thing down, because it's like above the drivers. So they took it down. You can see them like holding it in their hands, and they were like, what's happening with it? And yeah, eventually it's like, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we might not even know what the problem is or how to fix it. So now we just need to get old school, and we're going to do some hand waving.
We're going to have people moving. But there was a lot of technical errors.
Well, technology. No, we're wrong.
Poor George Russell. So I was confused, because I was like, where'd he go?
Literally, so he disappears off of the leaderboard. He disappears on the actual track, like that shows the track and where everyone's position is. He's just gone. And on the timesheet, it says out. And so we're like, it said I'm out. And we're like, where did he crash? What happened? And then the announcers, the F1 TV announcers come on, and they say, oh, his transponder is out. And so basically all the cars have a transponder on them, which is just a very basic like GPS sort of like radio communication. It basically helps with tracking their times, and it helps them know how far, like it times them in the sectors and stuff. So it tells them how far away from the cars in front and behind they are.
Yeah.
And so basically his just stopped working. So they couldn't track his actual times using that. And so that then affected his ability to use DRS because you have to be within 1 second of the person in front of you and in a DRS zone in order to be able to use DRS. And so they were having to like really be absolutely certain because they had to do it manually. So basically they had to manually override it, and then it had to be where like they changed this, I think, a setting in the car, and then his engineer came on the radio and said, we're going to manually override it, and we have to be absolutely certain that you are within 1 second of the car in front of you, and you have to wait for me to tell you that it's enabled before you use it. Otherwise, there could be a risk of a penalty. And so they had to go old school and just do it that way. But then it was really bizarre because on the F1 TV broadcast, instead of just keeping the regular leaderboard on screen and just putting a little asterisks or whatever next to Russell, and just manually moving him or adjusting him or whatever, they just got rid of the leaderboard and timing sheet completely. And so we didn't know where 81 was or what their trackings were. And I feel like with F1 TV, I love them for the most part, but we have had so many issues with this freaking leaderboard either not working or not being utilized effectively, where I'm like, that's all that we stare at for most of the race. It like, if that's gone, I'm just like, I don't know where anybody is. I don't know what's happening. I'm just looking at vroom vrooms. Where's going on?
We are spoiled.
We are.
I say that because apparently all I do is just watch old F1 races. I've been watching a lot of old F1 races, and I'm like, they don't have that. They every now and then they do, but like you are listening to those bastards talking like, well, who's that? How far away? What's this? What's that? Because you don't have that. But we are spoiled. Yes, you're very spoiled. But it's annoying. I'm like, it's too much. And also the margins are just so thin now that it's like anything can change between a split second. And sometimes like we don't even see that on the camera. We just see it on the leaderboard.
It's like fractions of seconds, you know? So he had that transponder issue. And then there was an issue with his steering wheel where I think they said either his steering or like the whole dashboard, like the lights went out. And so he's like, I don't know what's going on. And they were like,
well, they said you may lose something to the dashboard or something. And then George's like, as long as the steering wheel works, I'll be good.
As long as the steering wheel doesn't come out, which is funny because Fernando Alonso actually had that happen in, was it practice?
Yeah, it was FP2. But I didn't know if it came out or because you can take it out yourself. And so it sounded to me there was a steering wheel issue and then he just pops it out and popped it back on himself.
Maybe.
But because later on, I think when they were speculating at the time, they were like, oh, yeah.
Basically, what happened? Turn it off, turn it back on.
Yeah, pretty much. But at the time, I think that it sounded more like the commentators were saying, did it just come off? Or I think later when they got it,
they were like, no, it always intentional.
I think he popped it off and I back on. I think because they have the quick releases behind them. But and then I noticed too, because of the transponder issue with George, that also meant that Lando did not know when he was going to have DRS to George. So then his team had to come over the radio and they're like, Lando, like, we will tell you, but we have to be 100% sure. So he Lando affected everybody, but because George just affected everybody. He said, if I'm fucked, oh, y'all fucked.
Which even then, like, George wasn't even near, he was running in second for most of the race. He wasn't even near Oscar, so his ability to use DRS wouldn't have really been an issue.
Yeah, but I think that was before. I think that was like towards the start. But I mean, it was like pretty early on that he was having like transponder issues. Because at one point he did get investigated for the DRS thing.
I thought there was somebody.
Because there was somebody he got into DRS with, and then they immediately closed it because they were like wrong. I don't remember. So that was why he got investigated. So he got investigated by the FIA later about having DRS when he wasn't supposed to, and then he ended up being cleared for it because he didn't actually like gain anything from it or something because he had to go talk because otherwise, I mean, I'm like, why would I even bring it up?
Oh, he also had brake issues.
So apparently, a bunch of people were on brake issues because Matt complained about his brakes, then Charles complained about his brakes.
George said he had a brake-by-wire failure. So the pedal was going long, then it was going short.
Bless.
And then the steering wheel wasn't working. He was fighting tooth and nail.
Damn. George can't even, the car is just like, all the electronics falling apart.
I found the article where they're talking about George's technical issues, and it said that pressed on the drag reduction system trouble that was discussed with his engineer over the radio, Russell said, we were basically having all sorts of failures. We did an override on the DRS, and on one lap, I clicked the radio button, and the DRS opened. I straight away closed it again, backed off, gained no data, and I lost more than I gained. It was only open for a split second. It kind of goes to show the amount of issues we were having. But as I said, I'm really pleased with P2. So that's what happened with when he was called to the stewards for infringing on DRS.
And they were like, okay, you're good. Oh, just bizarre. That was just crazy. So Ferrari, I think that if that safety car would not have happened, our boys would have been up there. And I think because the hard tires sucked, they did great on the mediums. They were killing it.
It took a minute to get there. They had to warm them up.
Yeah, but like once they were, it was like V tire.
Yeah.
And then I think, so like, I was trying to think of what the strategy was going to be there. So was that I think that safety car was not going to happen. They were going to ride those mediums out, and they were going to have to go on a hard or a soft. And I think they intended to go on soft towards the end.
Yeah.
And that safety car fucked everything up. Because then everybody's changing tires, and they were forced to change tires then because otherwise they basically everybody undercut them. So then they can't later go change tires on the softs. Like it was, and that's the issue. So I kept everything, and I'm like, but I think if that wouldn't have happened, that would have been like the strategy. That would have been the one everybody probably would.
Ferrari finally would have gotten a strategy right, and then a safety car goes and fucks it all up.
That sounds. But then again, you have to try to think about, okay, if that happens, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, this race, we kind of deserved this race after Japan was such a snoozer. But this one almost felt too chaotic because, and this is where, like, having a two-stop sort of race makes everything so much more interesting.
It is so much better.
And because of the way this track was and the tire usage and all these different factors, a little bit of wind was coming into play, all these different things meant that I feel like a lot of times you get certain races where you can everyone's more or less on the same strategy where there's a certain window they're going to pit, and then you have several people all pitting at the same time, relatively close.
That's what, yeah, that's what everybody's like, qualifying. If you don't qualify this, you're probably going to suck the whole time, which is so boring. It is so boring.
Yeah, and then you get a race like this where the strategies, because it was most people were predicting it would be a two-stop race, the strategies were so varied that I feel like every other lap we had people overtaking, people pitting to undercut, people pitting to overcut. And it was so varied until we got the safety car that kind of reset everything. And then that kind of like threw a wrench in a lot of people's plans. But we got, I think, a good race that we deserved some action on that I wasn't about to fall asleep during.
No, I enjoyed it. I think that, I mean, honestly, like, Ferrari did pretty good. They did fine. I mean,
all things considered.
Lewis gained 4 places.
He seemed really happy after the race in terms of, like, I think he feels he's making progress with learning the car and changing his style of driving to suit the car a little more, getting used to everything. He sounded optimistic in the bits of like post-race interviews that I saw, which I'm like, we love a happy Lewis.
There's a lot of happy Lewis. I do think the discourse online is super interesting between, you have Carlos Sainz, so Lewis and Carlos are doing the exact same thing. They're getting used to a new team, a new car. How does this work? I mean, it's a whole new system, right? And so I feel like a lot of people online give Carlos a lot of grace. And they were like, well, what did you expect? He's still getting used to it. And because Lewis hasn't, like, won every fucking race, they're like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, why don't you have it together already? Wow, I bet Ferrari's really fucking happy that they got blah, blah. Hello? He's been with Mercedes for, like, 13 years or whatever the fuck he was with them. Are y'all dumb? Are you stupid? Of course it's going to take time to get used to an entire new team, like, everybody's new, and the car. So, duh. So, every time that you make an excuse for Carlos, because that's valid, it's the same for Lewis. And I think he's done a pretty good job so far getting used to a new car and a new team and a new everything. I'm just like, oh my God. I guess that's what happens when you're a 7-time world champion. That everybody's like, you just already know? Shut the fuck up and go eat your bag of Cheetos and live in your basement. So annoying. But anyway, Ferrari had a new floor too. So that was something that they were trying out, and I guess it's working pretty well for them. We did have the return of Sassy Charles. He's like, these brakes suck. And they're like, well, we can't do much about it now, can we? And they were like, ooh. And then at one point, when they first got on the hard tires, Lewis goes, these tires suck. Like, literally, that was it. These tires suck. And we're like, yeah, they did. That was not great. So, even though Ocon crashed in qualifying, I don't remember, I guess where did he end up qualifying? He qualified 14th, so it had to have been in Q2 that he crashed in. He did really well. Like, he gained 6 places. He started 14th. He finished 8th. Both Haas's were in the points. And I just felt like that was impressive to me. Like Ollie killed it. Ocon killed it. I was like, they're doing a pretty decent job. Like, that was impressive to me. Like, on top of, like, then Pierre Gasly just is doing a really good job. And I'm like, what's happening? What is going, like, we thought last year was it? What is going on? It's just like, we're just throwing dice. And whatever's, like, landing is landing.
The only consistent thing from last year is that Sauber is a tractor. It's a fluorescent green tractor.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is Hulkenberg finished 13th, and then he was disqualified because, for the exact same reason Lewis was disqualified for in China, because his skid plate was too worn down. So he was 13th, and then he wasn't. Ferrari people, then they got it rough. Like, who's out there? Like, the poor Sauber people got to just be on the brink.
Are there Sauber fans? I'm sure there are.
I think there are Hulkenberg fans and Bortoletto fans.
Good point.
I don't know about Sauber fans. Let me know if you're a Sauber fan.
Maybe when they become Audi, we'll get some Audi fans.
Yeah, probably.
If they improve.
Yeah, that was pretty much, I mean, the race was just nuts. Everybody's overtaking each other every 2 seconds. Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz had a moment, but, I mean, I think it was just a racing incident.
Yeah, they touched, and then Carlos, it looks like his side pod got, like, ripped into. Like,
Yeah.
that, like,
It looked like, though, it happened when Yuki, like, that he lost the back end for a second, and that's really what, like, caused it. Well, it looked more like it just was, like, an unfortunate racing incident, not even that Yuki, I think, was being overtly aggressive. I mean, they all kind of were, but that seemed more just like he lost the back end of the car because of the curve or whatever, and then it just happened. So
really unfortunate for Carlos. He qualified well,
yeah,
and started well, and seemed to be like he was going to be in the points.
Yeah,
and just didn't.
Yeah, he qualified 8th.
Really bad luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he qualified 8th, and Alex qualified 15th. So I mean, he was like kind of the Williams that everybody was looking at this weekend.
It'll be okay. We'll bounce back. It'll be fine.
But we had a lot of little stories, it felt like. You had brought up that Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar had track limits, and so did Matt.
Oh, yeah. So I kept hearing this on the broadcast, that it ended usually with, the way track limits works, for those who don't know, is you got these white lines that set this is where the track is between the 2 white lines on either side of you. And if all 4 wheels of your car, all 4 tires go completely off the track, and it is based on the tires, it's not based on any other part of the car. If all 4 tires go completely off the track, you can even be on, like, millimeters on the white line, you're still within track limits. If you go completely off, this considered track limits, and you have to race on the track. That's part of racing rules. I know, silly. But basically you'll get 2 warnings. So they'll say, hey, track limits. Again, track limits, stay on the track. By the 3rd time, you'll get a track limits. It's a black and white flag, and they'll wave it at you. Make sure you see it. And that basically means that if you exceed track limits, that's your 3rd and final warning. You exceed it again, you get a 5-second time penalty. If you do it again after that, it's 10 seconds. And then at the discretion of the stewards, you can get more penalties after that.
Yeah.
And they are notified before the race starts that there are certain corners of the track and certain parts of the track where track limits will be strictly enforced. They're always strictly enforced during qualifying. Where basically if you exceed track limits, your time for that lap in qualifying is deleted, and so it's strictly enforced. During free practice, it's kind of whatever. They don't really say anything about it. And then, but during the actual race itself, there's certain corners, certain parts of the track that are closely monitored for track limits, and they are enforced in those places. And the teams and drivers all know about this. They're told this before the race.
Oh, yeah.
And so basically, I kept hearing like track limits warnings for Isaac Hadjar, Kimi Antonelli, and Max Verstappen. And I think all three of them got a black and white flag waved at them. To where literally at one point, one of the engineers, I forget who it was, I think it was probably for Kimmy, got on the radio and was like, that's a black and white flag for track limits. Don't do it again. They're like, do not stop, because we will get a penalty.
Anna's like, stop. All right, we will hop into our rookie report.
Everyone's favorite segment.
I know. So, Kimi Antonelli, he finished 11th, 0 points. He did qualify 5th, so he lost... Ooh, I can't math. He lost 6 places. A lot of people lost a lot of places at the start. Like, they gained or they lost. It was just like, it was a good start. And then he also kind of got caught up after the safety car, which we kind of talked about a few minutes ago, behind Max and Ocon and everybody else in the midfield for a second. And then I think his tires just died. So Kimi, like we said, it was also the first time he didn't score points. So I think he'll bounce back. Yeah, it'll be okay. Isaac Hadjar, he finished 13th, also 0 points. He lost 5 places or so at the start. He qualified 12th. And I mean, so he ended up gaining back almost right where he qualified. Yeah, pretty much the most exciting. I didn't hear anything about his seatbelt, so I think they were just racing.
So I guess they got that issue fixed.
Yeah. Jack Doohan, he finished 14th, 0 points. He qualified 11th. I know he had talked about that safety car sort of messed up what their strategy was going to be for him. And so maybe we'll just see more from him next weekend. Nothing really stood out to me. I think he was playing it pretty safe after last weekend. So, yeah. Ollie Behrman, though, let me tell you. Okay, let's go, Ollie. So Ollie Behrman, he finished 10th, 1 point, but he gained like 6 places from the start. So he qualified 20th. And so at the start of the race, he's like up there, gaining 6 places, like right before he just went for it. And so Ollie this weekend, I would say probably our best performing rookie the entire weekend. He did a really good job. Gabriel Bortoleto, he finished 18th, 0 points. He also qualified 18th, so nothing too exciting there. I'm assuming, because he's in a tractor. I always kind of feel bad for the drivers that are in like the really, really slow cars, because I don't think it's any representation of their skill level. So that has to be extremely frustrating. But, Liam Lawson, he finished 16th, so 0 points. I know he had some DRS issues during qualifying. So they were trying to say that's one of the reasons he didn't make it into Q2, because he qualified 17th, so he was pretty much out. I don't know. We'll see with Liam. We're just going to have to see how it keeps on going. Hopefully he kind of gets his footing and does better. And then Fernando Alonso, he just kind of, he finished 15th, 0 points. He had that steering wheel issue, and I don't really recall anybody talking much about him during the race. I think he was kind of in the midfield. He qualified 13th. He finished 15th. So,
not a lot going on.
Not a lot going on, but at least he finished.
Yeah.
He finished. No points, but he finished. So it's all right, Alonso. We know you're just going to, what, Alonso?
If you're playing the long game.
If anybody could just, he's just trying to make everybody relaxed. He's just trying to think, okay, you think, it's jam, and all of a sudden.
A full sense of security, kind of lull them in with the initiation.
We said that, Fernando is like the rookie to look out for.
Yeah.
So just pay attention to him. I will jump into the best and worst. Okay, my driver of the day, as much as it pained me to say, just because he is like a cousin that I pick on at the family barbecue, is George Russell. I think, his car did not want to cross the line, y'all. His car, he was not supposed to finish the race. Somebody did a witchy spell on him, and he, got his podium, and I had to think that was impressive.
Where there's a Will, there's a George Russell.
Yeah, yabba dabba doo or whatever. So good for George Russell. Yeah, I can admit that.
I had two drivers of the day. I was split between Pierre Gasly with Alpine, just very impressed with his performance, and then Ollie Behrman.
I had Ollie, but then I was like, Georgia's car hated him. It didn't want to go anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, Ollie starting dead last and then getting up at the final point in P10, good on him. Yeah, those are my two, like, kind of split between drivers of the day. My biggest letdown was Carlos Sainz's retirement after contact with Yuki Tsunoda. I think he had a good chance to get some points, is making some of the progress of Williams, and it just unlucky.
Mm-hmm. My biggest letdown, I put just Red Bull as a whole and the safety car. The safety car kind of just messed everybody up. And then Red Bull just, I mean, it's not great. I saw a report where Max's manager ran into the Red Bull garage and was yelling at Helmut Marko and was just going the fuck off. And he just like sat there and apparently took it. Obviously, I wasn't there. This is something that I read. This is allegedly from multiple sources online. And by sources, I mean actual news outlets, not like somebody who just posted a picture on Instagram and said they were there. But I don't know. And then, yeah, that wasn't great.
But so Max sent his manager and was like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm not going to yell at people. You need to go yell at people. That's your job. You're my manager. Go yell at people.
And so he did. So we are approaching the end of our triple header this coming weekend in Jeddah. It is the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And so there's actually some interesting stuff in here about this weekend that I'd gather to talk about. So last year's results, it was Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, and Charles Leclerc. Now, this track, we have 3 DRS zones. There's 27 corners. It's very fast. The average speeds are like 250 kilometers per hour, which equals to about 155 miles per hour. It's faster than Silverstone, and the only track that that's faster than it is Monza, the Temple of State. So that being said, it's going to be a very quick race, but it is not a racetrack that people tend to overtake at all the time, which immediately I was like, oh God, not another one. Boring. But didn't I just make these tracks wider? Wider. Made it out wider. Sorry, sometimes my accent, the T's and the D's get a little muddy, so wider. Thank you for clarifying. You're welcome. I think they should just make the car smaller. I think that would probably work out a little better than every track getting construction on it that other like series also race on. But whatever we need to do to fix it is fine. But that
I'm open to alternative solutions. I'm just saying something's got to give.
I agree. So this being said, that normally the tire degradation is very low and it's a one stop. But Pirelli this year said, you know what? We heard ya, and we're going to try to make this more interesting. So they are bringing a softer tire selection to Saudi Arabia, hoping that there will be more tire degradation and hoping that means that they will have a 2-stop rather than a 1-stop, because that was a complaint. I mean, the drivers don't love it either, because basically it means I qualify and that's it. And the engineers are like, okay, well, how are we even supposed to do the strategy side when basically everybody's just like, when are we going to undercut somebody? That's pretty much all that is with the 1-stop. Like, who's undercutting who and who's going to take the gamble of a medium or a soft tire at the start or a hard. I mean, it's like all those, when you have a 1-stop, it's pretty okay, if you see someone start off on a hard, you know what they're doing. There's no, you just know. It's just, and it's not that complicated.
Yeah, I did like there was Carlos Sainz gave an interview where they asked him kind of about the tire situation.
Yeah.
And he is one of the co-heads of the Drivers Association.
Mm-hmm.
That George Russell was also one of the...
Did not read that. That was sometime last year that it came back or something.
Yeah. Well, it's always been there, but they just launched an Instagram.
Yeah.
But before George, it was Vettel. Was the head of it. But basically, Sainz came on to take more kind of it's the drivers sort of their union kind of thing. And so Carlos started to take on a little bit more of a role there. And so basically he was asked about the tire situation. He was like, I kind of feel for Pirelli, because for the longest time we kept saying they need to make the tires more durable, but because basically they were wearing out too fast. I think part of the problem is that the tires were exploding, if I remember correctly, like from what I've heard, was that before they made some changes to make the tires more durable, you had a lot of like tires just blowing up, and that caused like it was made things a lot more accident prone and dangerous. And so they were calling for the tires to be sturdier and so that you could use them for longer and stuff like that. And he's like, now it seems like they've made the tires too durable. And now we're calling for them to make them less durable so that there's more interest in the race. And he's like, I think we all need to just get on the same page with what we're wanting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's not super fair to Pirelli on that end. And I'm like, I agree to an extent. But I'm like, Pirelli is also the one that choose the compounds of the tires, the soft, medium, hard, that are available to the drivers at each track. And so they have complete control over being able to select a higher grade of tire so it is more durable, or a lower grade tire that's less durable to make the tire more interesting. They have full like ability to change that kind of stuff,
which is exactly what they did with Saudi Arabia. They said, so normally last year the C4 was the soft option, now it's the C5. So basically the tires they had in Melbourne are the tires they're going to have now. So they are going to be softer. So we should have more tire degradation, which they're hoping that means there will just be more maybe we'll see a 2-stop, or we'll just see how people will actually do that, because they are trying to listen to what people are saying. And so the director, Mario Isola, said, based on our experience last year and with the information gathered during the development phase of the new compounds, we wanted to go in this direction to give the teams and drivers a wider range of strategy options. And they also have a new tire, the C6, that has not been debuted yet, and that is rumored to come during Monaco. So we'll see, because I don't know if this is official yet or if it's going to be this year or next year. They had talked about making Monaco a required 2-stop.
I believe that's this year.
Okay. So, and that's also when the C6, I think, is supposed to debut. So
is that the super soft?
It'll be in a very soft tire. So we'll see.
At least this is one way that they can try to get around some of the more, I would call them, boring tracks where you have less overtaking options or opportunity to overtake.
Make that car smaller.
So if we can't make the car smaller or make the tracks bigger, at least we're changing up the tire situation to try and force some interest, which I'm not mad at.
The cars looked so much cooler back in the day anyway. I've been watching old races, y'all. They looked so much cooler, and they could actually pass each other. And it was just, damn, no wonder everybody's always talking about like how it used to be more cool, because honestly, I'm watching all these old races and it was cooler just because you could pass each other. And also, we know it's crazy. They had different tire people. Some people had like really good people had, people had different tires. I mean, they had different teams. They're like, I'm going with Goodyear. I'm going with Pirelli. I'm going with whoever. And I'm like, that's crazy too. To think that like, that was another thing that drivers got to do. I wonder, like, when I don't know the history of that, of when they decided we only use Pirelli. And I wonder if it was because of trying, to work with a tire manufacturer to help with degradation and things like that. So maybe they could just have more control over it or something, more consistency.
Yeah, some sort of element of consistency across all teams. But I also think that's another interesting thing of who are you going to go with?
So that's just, I don't know, with your tired dad. But essentially, that's it, guys. It was way more fun than Japan. Lots of little baby storylines, I feel like, that, we'll see. And hopefully that Saudi Arabia will be way more interesting than it is every other year. So we'll see if Pirelli's tire choice makes it more interesting than it was last year. F1 Academy will be back there. I ignorantly, during our F1 Academy review / just us talking about an episode, I mentioned how, I think they've done a race in Saudi Arabia, but I think they were criticized. Well, they probably were, but that they didn't care because they're back. And I even said, yeah, they're going to Jeddah. Didn't know Jeddah was in Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry, but I do now. So we will also get to see our girls race. So we shall see. But I guess that pretty much covers it.
And we will talk at you next week.
Bye.